Hello world, I am Curtis Simpson, and this is Objective Typography News number 41. Today is Friday, March 20th, 2026, and we are about to finish off this week with some great typography. First off, we're going to start out, Monotype has another collaboration. This will surprise no one, but it's still industry news, and it's interesting to see these collaborations or these partnerships like continuously just like be announced. We'll talk about what that could mean here in a bit. Got two really good deep dives for you today. We previewed them in the last episode, so we're going to be looking at Mass Driver's MDUI, and we're going to be looking at Just Another Foundry's JAF Globus. Put these head to head with some of the fonts that they are being inspired by, hoping to replace, and doing things a little bit different. So I think that'll be interesting. And then I have four brand new releases, off type, the designer's Foundry, comma type, and lift type. And last but not least, a really interesting / exciting preview of a new release coming soon from Sharp Type. It's a black letter font. It's a black letter typeface. I saw at least 10 styles. It looks pretty wild. Not at all what I would have expected to be coming next from Lucas Sharp, but it's coming. And then we'll finish out the episode, per usual, with a video to send you off with. This week, coming from Type Brigade, fresh out of Vancouver, Canada. So they're all the way up to Type Brigade 59. So I'll be sending you off. Per usual, as usual, all of the links are in the description. None of the links are sponsored. If you're watching the replay of this, hopefully there are chapters. If you're watching live along with me, welcome. Let's get into it. Let me switch my screen. First off, we'll talk about Monotype. I'm going to get a drink. Monotype. I reported on a few of these. I'm actually going to need some chapstick too. I apologize. We'll just set the chapter after this we'll set the chapter after the chapstick break. That's better. Okay. So the first story here is Monotype partnered with Frontify. Headline here, Monotype and Frontify streamline workflows, blah, blah, blah. These press releases, you can read through them. This is linked in the description. Monotype press releases, they basically just talk about how awesome they are, how awesome the other brand is, and how great it's going to be that they now have access to Monotype fonts. I was not previously familiar with Frontify. It's like a name that I've kind of like peripherally heard, but it's not like an app that I've ever used. I'm not working in these giant conglomerates and corporations and stuff like that. But it does seem pretty cool. I think I have it open right here. Yeah. So basically it's like, imagine if a style sheet came to life and it was like mixed with Notion and a company wiki and cloud, like a Google Docs almost, because it's like cloud that that all syncs and stuff like that. Really, really useful. There are definitely jobs when I did work in those big companies where I wish that I would have had something like this. It seems incredibly useful. It looks like right there, it looks even like it's built into some of the Adobe apps. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, this is something that large companies use to keep their assets all up to date and keep their style guides on point, and just keep all their branding stuff in one place and make it easy for them. You can see the list of 4 or 5 people that they're giving big shout outs there: Kia, Microsoft, OpenAI, Uber, Volkswagen. But I think the big thing here is just this is another Monotype partnership. We've seen them partner, they've been partnered with Adobe for a long time, but last year we reported them adding like another 1,500 fonts or something like that. Then we saw them make a deal with Canva. Then we saw them cut off their deal with Squarespace, I believe. But basically any platform that you can think of, Monotype has probably partnered with. That is the factual objective portion of this. Let's just speculate here for a second. I know this is the news, but what could this mean? Well, they were purchased by private equity, I don't know, some years ago, 2019, I think. I'm probably wrong on that. A few years ago. There were rumors that they were that the private equity firm that owns them was trying to sell it, but the price tag was like huge and everyone kind of laughed at it. I don't know that there is. It's hard to quantify things like this, to quantify like intellectual property. I don't know what the licensing. I don't know any of the structure. I don't know anything like that. So I don't know if the price was good or bad. But similar to what we've talked about with other companies, Canva being the most recent, it's entirely possible that Monotype could become a public company again. Sometimes private equity basically comes in, and the private equity firm that owns Monotype did do this. They came in, took out a bunch of debt in Monotype's name, and then paid themselves with that money. That is factual. You can go look that up. That's what most private equity does. Because then the private equity can basically shut down the business that they own, and they don't have to pay that debt back. It just goes bankrupt, and they got their money. So those are extraction plays. There's no evidence necessarily that that's what they're doing with Monotype. But I would say with all these partnerships, I think rather than like an extraction, as it might have seemed in the beginning, it might be pointing more towards Monotype going public again. They didn't make a sale. They're partnering with all these people that would look great on like the white paper or the thesis or whatever it's called, the prospectus that you would put out before you make your public offering. Wouldn't be the IPO because they've been public before, but that part is all speculation. But I think it's an interesting story to pay attention to. Monotype is obviously the giant in the industry, even though on the channel we do typically focus on independent foundries. They're just more interesting. So let's get into those. Let me check my notes. I forget what we're doing first. I got these a little bit out of order. Okay, so first up, we are going to, let me go ahead and give you the teaser first. First up, we're gonna look at SharpType. If you're watching live, this is gonna be a little bit out of order in the description. If you're watching the chapters, I'll have this in the right place for you. This is a pretty shocking, this is a pretty unexpected preview from SharpType. It says, in progress, Sharp Fraktur by Lucas Sharp is beginning to take shape. No ETA on this. Let's make sure they didn't post another one. No, they posted some pretty sweet stickers there coming up 14 hours ago. But yeah, Sharp Fraktur. I don't know that anyone saw this coming. I interviewed Lucas Sharp whenever they made YouTube Sans or YouTube Display, a couple of months ago. No mention of this. Of course, I didn't ask, but yeah, I would not have guessed this ever. But it looks super cool. I counted, you can only see what we're both looking at the same thing. You know as much as I do. But I counted 10 styles on here. There's 5 different weights, and then they have italics. You can see the bold italics switching back and forth there. So thin, what did I write down? It's got thin, medium. Do I have it written down? Thin, medium. 1 second. I didn't open up my tab. Thin. Light, thin, regular, semi-bold, bold. And then they have italics. I don't know if I've ever seen specifically like, here's black letter and here's the black letter italics. Someone who's more familiar with black letter can let me know if that's a typical thing. But in my brain, black letter was just black letter. Like I know there's different styles of it, but Fraktur, I thought was just Fraktur. I didn't realize there was potentially an italic version of it. But there it is. It looks pretty cool. It looks pretty interesting. The thin weights definitely look very alien. But if you're building off that skeleton, just make the pen smaller, and I guess that's how they're doing it. It'll be interesting to play around with this one if we can get access to it. Karaoke Tube says Lucius. Luscious, probably. Yeah, it looks really cool. Lucas Sharp Fraktur coming out of SharpType sometime. Let's go ahead and get into our deep dives. I'm going to do the new releases afterwards because it'll be like, we'll close the chapter on the ones we talked about last week with a couple of deep dives, and then we'll get a preview of what we're going to talk about next week in some of the newer episodes, because I'll do deep dives on these, and hopefully that'll be the way we can kind of do things from now on. This first one here is JAF Globus. This is coming from Just Another Foundry. We did look at this very slightly last week, so I'm not going to spend too much time here on the page, but I'm going to do a slow scroll while I read you some stats. It is 12 total weights, or 12 total styles. There are 6 weights, 6 weights plus italics. It is variable. 648 glyphs, 15 OpenType features. You can purchase it from the Foundry. There is a trial, and it is a full font trial. And decent price tag on this. 299 euros for the family on desktop. So that'd be 12 weights or 12 styles total, and the license is standard on this. So let's hop into Affinity. Am I going to be in the way? I'm going to take myself off because I noticed last time I was getting into the UI a little bit and I was in the way. So see you in a little bit. So this is Globus. We looked at this last week, so let me just give you a refresher. This is essentially a universe alternative. They're not calling it that, but they did say that they were inspired by two different fonts. One was Universe, and one was their own JAF Bernini. We are going to look at both of those compared here in a second, but I want to give you a preview of this. This is made for small sizes, so you can see how much spacing there is on the top there. And last week I said, if this was going to be large, if you were going to be doing this like as a display typeface, you'd probably have to kern that real tight. I was happily proved wrong, and I will show you this in display size in just a little bit. But let's go ahead and zoom in on this. So this is the typeface. Maybe it would work best. I'm going to go ahead and slowly go through these real quick so you can get an idea of what's going on. But maybe this would work best if we went ahead and looked at this in the comparison right off the bat. They said they wanted to give the implication of a geometric sans serif without actually being stuck with a rigid geometric, what would you say? The actual geometric forms. So you can see these are not perfect circles. This is not like Futura, but they do kind of imply that. And when you're thinking about universe, it's quite a bit more implied than universe is. So universe would be considered a neo-grotesque, I guess, Swiss style. Came out around the same time. I don't think it's actually from Switzerland, though. Someone's going to have to correct me. I don't know my universe history, unfortunately. But Universe and Helvetica came out at the same time. Helvetica just, Universe was the Carmelo to their LeBron. Okay, so JAF Globus here is in red, and you can see these are the ones they're saying that they took inspiration from. So we've got Universe Next Pro up top because, in 2026, we need to compare it to the font that would actually be used in 2026. And that's not going to be the old school, like first digitized linotype Universe. It's going to be Universe Next. You can get this in Adobe fonts. That's where I've synced this at. And we're probably all pretty familiar with that. JAF Globus right here. And then on the bottom, two different versions of JAF Bernini. There is Bernini No Sans and Bernini Na Sans. And between these two, the Bernina, the bottom one here, is just said to be a little bit more playful. This is probably something that you could have done alternates for, and I'm not sure when this was designed, but it's kind of cool that there's like a specific set for it, but it does seem like there's quite a bit of overlap here, so I feel like it could have just been an alternate style, but it's kind of cool to name them separately like this too. You guys can let me know which one you would prefer. So we're just going to do kind of a close-up deep dive with this. If you are only casually a fan of typography, I think that you might want to, fast forward a little bit because this is going to get pretty nerdy. But what I want to look at here is what they've done differently with theirs. So we're going to start with Universe because that's kind of what you would probably compare this to. If you're somebody that's using Universe, if you're thinking about using Universe but you don't want to pay the giant license, if you don't have Adobe fonts, let's see how it compares to that. And you can immediately see a few things right off the bat. It's made for small sizes. Like I said, let me just repeat that. It's made for small sizes. They claim that it has a strong presence in display use and it's comfortable rhythm in body text. So we're going to put that to the test here in a second. But just keep that in mind when we're looking at this. This was designed for small sizes. And you can see there's a lot of overlap. I mean, there's a lot of like similar things. But if we pull this, let me just go ahead and pull this up here real quick. Let's do an alt on this. Put it at 50%. Just so we can get an idea of what's going on. You can see the X height is quite a bit taller on JAF. I'm just going to call it Globus from now on. JAF Globus. You can see the X height's quite a bit taller, so it is going to feel more modern. If you were to put this in, if you were to drop this in as a replacement, it's going to feel more modern because just a taller X height feels more modern these days. But you can see it's got that Frutiger K on it, this K right here that doesn't quite touch. That is one thing that they've also pulled from the Bernina version of it. Bernini No has the leg meeting the arm there. But yeah, a lot of it is feel like the vibe feels very similar. You can see the M here doesn't quite meet the baseline, whereas it does go all the way down to the baseline there. The Q is different. The P drops a little bit lower. This is another modern thing. So you can see right here, the P, let's go ahead and get a, oops, I apologize. Let's get a guide on here. So you can see the P right here is pretty close to the R right there. They're not exactly, it's dropped down a little bit. But when you come over here, you can see how much more these are dropped down, like just in general. Both of these are dropped down quite a bit. So probably the same space between those, but the bowl of the P and the R are a lot bigger. So the same way that you increase your X height on there, this is my opinion, but in my opinion, when you increase those bowl sizes on the top of those, it also just does feel more modern. You know, I don't know, something about just being bigger feels newer. But you can see the ampersand's a little bit different there. This does have a single story A on it, so if you were someone that wanted to switch to that, you've got a single story A there, which I always think looks nicer in logos. One thing that I can see right off the bat is there's a little bit more contrast here. Not a ton, like it's not crazy, but look at this B here. You can see it cutting into the stem there. You can see how thin it gets where it joins there. And then when we come up here, it's similar, but it just feels a little bit sharper, a little bit more contrast in there. And I know they're different colors, so it's going to look a little different. But overall, you know, it's pretty similar. Dots on the eyes rather than the squares. Yeah, it looks nice though. Let's go ahead and see what they pulled from Bernino Sans and Bernina Sans. And you can see the one thing I wanted to point out, the one thing I want to point out with all of these is that the G here is unlike everything in these other ones. So these other ones do follow that. They've got the straight, oh gosh, I can't think of what this is called now. It's not the beard. The beard goes lower, but it's got this straight stem right here on the G, whereas this one's perfectly circular. So again, they were trying to make this feel like a geometric sans serif, but make it able to work at small sizes. I don't think we necessarily need it to dig into Bernina and Bernino too much, but I wanted to point out a few things where they pulled from their own inspiration. So if we look at the Q and the R here, the Q's got that straight little tail at the bottom, the R's got the straight leg, and that's what we're seeing in Globus as well, as compared to the traditional Swiss R and that I don't know, that Frutiger type Q. I'm sure someone did it before him, but I always think of Frutiger when I see that Q that just rolls along the baseline there. So this is how it compares. Let me go ahead and show you how this looks at big sizes. I said last week, I thought that this would not work. They said that it would, and they were very right. Strong presence is what they said that this would have. We can go ahead and lower this. It is a variable font. I forgot to show you that. Let me go back and we'll show you this in variable. But I do think it looks great at the big display sizes. Nice and bold. You lose a bit of the contrast, but that's great. I think it's going to be very impactful. Let me show you. This is a variable font. I should have done this first. I apologize. It can go all the way down to light. I think I showed this last week as well, but it's worth showing again. I know I didn't show the italics last week, so we'll show those. And all the way up to bold. And just like last week, we didn't make enough room. But I think it looks really nice at bold. Let's go ahead and look at this in italic. Boom. And we'll do the variable on the italics. JAF Globus, looking very nice. Yeah, I think that does look really, really nice at the bold sizes. And it said that it was supposed to be a comfortable rhythm in the body copy. So even though this was made to be used I guess body copy is typically small sizes, so that makes sense. It does look very comfortable. It looks nice. It kind of reminds me of Futura when you're setting it like this, but I don't know, it's just that implication of the geometric sans, but yeah, it kind of perfectly fills that gap, like universe, but a little bit better. Is it going to be quite as developed as universe? No, I don't think so, just because you know, we saw the price tag, we saw the features and stuff like that, but the price tag, you know, the price tag in terms of licensing this is going to be quite a bit lower, quite a bit cheaper, standard license on it. So I think that this is a good one coming from just another Foundry, JAF Globus. Let me go ahead and give you a reminder here of what we're looking at with MDUI. This one is going to be the next one. I'm going to get a drink of water and we'll get into this. So this next typeface here is from Massdriver. We did give a preview of this one last week, so I'm not going to go over everything that we went over last week, but I'll run through it real quick, and then we're going to move on to comparisons. So this is MDUI. This can come in variable. Let me go ahead and switch my notes. I apologize. 1 second. This can come in variable, but you do have to request it. Is this the right one? Yes, so variable upon request. So the trial license is a full license, but I don't have it in variable, but you can get variable upon request. We're going to talk about the backstory of this one. I just want to give you a reminder of what we're looking at here. This is, in a similar vein, it could be a replacement for Helvetica, Universe, Accidents Grotesque. But this is from Rutherford Craze, Massdriver, starts at thin, builds all the way up to ultra, and each weight has an italic for it. So very, very impactful right there. And that is the standard version that would be similar to your typical Helvetica, Universe, Accidents Grotesque, even Arial. But you've got an extra small version here that has nice big ink gaps on it. The standard version does have ink gaps as well. You can see those right there. But then extra small is going to have giant ink gaps. Extra large is going to have almost no ink gaps. I mean, essentially when they're that small, you basically got no ink gaps on it. So that is MDUI, just a refresher there. I am going to go over to the Massdriver website. We're going to look at this article that he wrote, and I'll talk through a little bit about the history of this. So we did cover this. I apologize. We did cover this a little bit last week, but MDUI is made to be paired with MDIO, and we can see that right here. MDIO on top, MDUI on bottom. He's got another specimen on here, so we'll get to that in a second. But he started MDIO, made for coding and anything that needs monospace typeface. This was originally released on Future Fonts. It's now reached version 2, actually. That was going to be a surprise at the end of this, but as of a couple days ago, there was a version 2 released on Future Fonts. I'm going to show you that at the very end of this. But this is version 1 right here. So this was the final version. It was released on Future Fonts. He notes that, the reason for doing that was to get feedback on it, but also so that he could start to support the font financially throughout its development. And the goal with this was to have very legible characters. The goal of IO, this monospaced, MDIO, this monospaced font, was to have a focus on the legibility of each individual letter. So it was focused on each single letter or character glyph, making sure that it's distinguishable and legible. So you can see there, we've got the 1, the L, the I. You've seen this before in hyper-legible typefaces. So at the same time, he said he didn't want to tell anybody he was working on this because he didn't actually know if he was going to put it out, but he did, and it looks amazing. MDUI. At the same time, he was working alongside MDIO. He was building MDUI. And we looked at these last week, how similar they were, and you can see how they definitely can build off of one another. And I'm sure that as he was getting that feedback from MDIO, he was able to improve MDUI. So what is MDUI made for? It is an alternative. It is the evolution of the international typography style that we talked about last week. But he looked at this as more of an interfacing typeface. So by interfacing, he's talking about reading like a word or two at a time. Like he's got a few different interfaces here. We're going to look at these a little bit bigger in affinity. But he's talking about looking at like a sentence, looking at like the time on your watch, looking at a menu inside of your inside of an app on your PC or something like that. And we talked about this last week, how he's been using these typefaces on his own computers for years. He's been using MDUI particularly for the last 3 years. And here's a little bit of the inspiration. So essentially, he talks about how he drops in this very nice Zuzanna Lichko quote here: "We read best what we read most." There's a lot of debate about what's most legible, what's most readable, and people keep using these neo-grotesques. People keep using Helvetica, even though there are typefaces that should be more readable and more legible. Helvetica becomes the standard because it's what we're all used to. You're used to Helvetica. You're used to typesetting stuff in Arial if you were a kid and you needed to use Microsoft for your class papers and stuff like that, or your PowerPoints. But we've got three different examples here. We've got Rail Alphabet, we've got Helvetica, and we've got Universe from left to right. And this is essentially him trying to improve upon this, adding to the conversation is what he said. So once again, this one is built for UI, so it is very purpose-built. I love that. I love a purpose-built font. And you can see we've got the XL, the UI, and the extra small right there. But essentially, he was trying to say, like, it's almost like if you can't beat them, join them. Like, we all know that neo-grotesques aren't the best for what they're used for, but they are used for this so often that we all become just used to it. Like, we can read neo-grotesques very well because we read them all the time. So he took it upon himself to make a better version of a neo-grotesque, and I think that he's done a really good job of accomplishing that. So here you can see MDIO and MDUI side by side. These were made to be paired together. You can see the heights and stuff are the same. So I'm not sure, they probably don't, yeah, they don't take up the same meta space because one is monospace, one's proportional. But the cap height, the X height, the ascender height, that kind of stuff, I think is all the same. You can see here him using these. He tested this extra small size all the way down to 4 points. So it's not going to look like 4 point to us, but just imagine, if this was really, really small. You're seeing a scan of the actual 4 point print, and you could still read that very clearly. Like, you're getting a little bit of ink, missing in places here and there, but 4 points is incredibly small, and that still looks very, very legible. Here are some of the changes he made. We're not going to spend too much time on these because we'll be able to look at them in Affinity, but you can see dots versus squares, the crossbars on the slash zeros, and some of these other hyper legible features added to it. So let's go ahead and hop into this. The last thing he noted on here was, after spending all these years working on this, he quotes a designer of a supercar here where he was interviewed, and that said that it cost 2 million euros to make the car. The interviewer asked him, like, if it could cost 3 million euros, what would you change? And the designer said, nothing. This is the best car we can make. And that was essentially the conclusion that he came to at the end of MDUI. This is the best version of this style of typeface that he could make. So here are the specimens. I'm just pulled these off. These were SVGs on the website, so we can look at these a little bit bigger than they were on there. So at the bottom, you can see specimen via mass driver. These are straight from the website, but you can see these in context, which I think looks really nice. It's nice to see things as they're intended, and like I said, this is very purpose-built, so it's really nice to see examples of that rather than, some of the more impressive, or maybe like more flashy is a better term, some of the more flashy specimens and stuff that catch your attention but aren't really like real world use cases. So you can see the big ink traps right here. I am 99.9% sure that is UIXS. So when you are with those really small sizes where you've got the date, or you've got the temperature down here, you're using the XS as like the really small sizes. And then this is probably the regular UI. I'm not sure. Those do have pretty big ink traps on them. So, I mean, on a watch, you would expect it to be pretty small. So you're seeing those there. These here don't, yeah, those have decent ink traps on them. So these are probably all extra small ones. You know how big the top bar is up here. That's pretty small. So it would make sense to use the smaller sizes. But this is SVG, so luckily we can zoom in on this pretty far and we can see. I think this one here is actually the standard one. Let's go ahead and check real quick. We've got the standard right here. Let's look, just peek at this real quick. This will be the last super nerdy thing we do until we compare these. Those there, and here we go. Yeah, I think that's actually the standard UI one that's on the UI there. That makes perfect sense. So let's go ahead and look at these compared to the alternatives. If you were going to be looking at Accidens Grotesque or Helvetica or Universe Next, we've got Universe Next Pro on here again. Arial was mentioned as well, but if you're looking at Helvetica and you're looking at Arial, you're almost looking at the same typeface. So we're going to go ahead and compare these to the classics. Let me give you a few features on this real quick. Or a few notes on this real quick before we move on. Go ahead and sit on, what should we sit on? The main one? I don't know. Let's just sit here for a second. So 48 total styles. You're going to have 16 per family, per subfamily. So each one of these has 16. It's going to be 8 weights plus italics. You can get a variable upon request, but that's not included in the price tag. So I don't know if that's going to be in the price tag or not. If you want the full family, you want all 3 of these right here, all 48 styles, it's going to be 960 euros. If you just want one, like say you just want MDUI, you're not super worried about having the big and small sizes, or maybe you'll upgrade later, 480 euros for that. So half the price if you just want one, but it's kind of a 2 for 3 or 3 for 2 if you want to get the whole thing, because if you're going to buy 2, it would cost the same to buy all 3. It does have a trial font, and it is the full font, and 900 glyphs. 900 glyphs on this, 25 open type features. We're going to get to some of these here in just a second after this comparison. But you can see when you stack these all decks together, if you showed these to your non-designer friends or family, I don't know that they would see a difference. But I would bet that they could feel the difference if you put these together. I haven't tested this myself, but if he's used this for 3 years and this is what he said, like he couldn't make it better than this, I believe that. So let me see. I thought I had some of these highlighted. I must have messed that up. I do have them written down though, so we'll go ahead and look at those. I'm going to note like a few of the biggest changes here, because you'll see that the top one and the bottom 2 are pretty similar. Top is Accidents Grotesque next. Third one there is Helvetica. That's the standard Helvetica. No, this is Helvetica New. Let me check. No, that's the standard Helvetica. I apologize. Okay, so that's the standard Helvetica there, and then Universe Next Pro, the same one we looked at up top with Globus. If you look at these 3, they look pretty similar, and we can start to see some of the things that he's doing different here. The C is quite a bit more closed, so he's not worried about making this hyper-legible. You can use IO if you want it hyper-legible. It's even more closed than Helvetica, whereas Accidents Grotesque next and Universe Next Pro, they're a little bit more open. So he's closing it even more. He's going even more neo-grotesque than neo-grotesque. If we look at the K, the K's got a crossbar on it here. Interesting. I like those. I typically like them a little bit smaller than that, but you know, if he's been testing this in UIs, again, it's supposed to be used at small sizes. So you could see Accidents Grotesque and Helvetica, they both got the leg meeting the arm there, whereas Universe has the Fraktur K on there where it just barely touches. Some of the other things that I want to note, again, the P, we talked about that in Globus as well, but if you look at the P and the R here, the P's drop down quite a bit further than the older versions of the P. The R, we looked at this last week, and I thought, was that notch there made for as an ink trap? No, that notch is just made there to give a little bit of contrast, I think. Probably to help it at small sizes so that doesn't glob up quite as much. But you can see it's similar. It's similar to Accidents Grotesque up there. Similar to something like Avenir as well. Whereas these down here, you know, they've got that nice Swiss R. Let me see what else I wrote here. The Q is different as well. So the Q is going to be different from all 3 of these. We've actually got 4 different Qs here. So that's nice to see. It's nice to see, even though these are very similar typefaces, they're all doing their own thing. This one here is dropping down on the bottom there. Very nice. We've got the A, I think, is probably the biggest change. So when you think of Helvetica, if I want to, like when I first started looking at typeface, when I first became a graphic designer, when I was a student, I would look to see what the A was because I could recognize the Helvetica A. You know, it's got that S shape to it. Universe here is a little bit different. It just meets the stem, slams right into it. It's not trying to be smooth. And that's what we're doing here. The one thing you'll probably notice right away is this A is quite a bit boxier. So see how round the top of this A is, and it's got the little tail, very round for Accidents. Then we come to MDUI, and it's pretty boxy. Come down here to Helvetica, it's pretty round again, a little boxy, but pretty round. You know, these big round bowls, the round top, a little bit of tail on them. So that goes through this entire font. It's all just a little bit boxier. And that was one of the things that was very intentional. Once again, this is meant to be used in user interfaces, and according to him, that made it a little bit better. Again, we've got the K with the crossbar. Love to see I like when the K's match. I don't know, not every typeface matches the lowercase and the uppercase K, but I really enjoy when they do that. I do have some more notes here. The F and the T, this was another thing that he changed. So you could see that crossbars on the F here and the T here. Accidents Grotesque is a decent size, but if we get down to Helvetica, this F, the crossbar on the F is so small. The top, I forget what that's called. It's not a shoulder. The top of the F there, that ascender, is very, very short. These crossbars here, they're very short. If you were thinking about small sizes, what would you want? You would want a more distinct, you'd want a longer crossbar, you'd want a longer top on these. And you're getting that on both of these, a little bit of a longer crossbar. So everything on here is purpose-built. Everything on here is taking these Swiss or these international typography styles and just making them better for what they're being used for. They're being used for something they were not designed to be used for. They're being used, you know, Helvetica used to be an interface before in Apple, in Mac OS, before it was Mac OS. What did it used to be called? OS X. Yeah, and everyone was like, this isn't made for user interfaces, but it's being used for this, so he built a version of it that is better to be used in it. Every number on here is basically different. Look at the numbers on these here. You can see one thing that would be terrible for user interface is this 6, this 9. They're super, super closed. The 8 is very, it could be confused for a B sometimes. It doesn't look like he's going hyper legible with this, but there is a little bit of a difference between the top and the bottom there. But just in general, you've got, if we look at all 4 of these at once, see if we can get it squeezed in there. If we look at all 4 of these at once, there's a very distinct 3. There's an open 4 on it. There's an open 6. There's an open 9. The 7, it doesn't curve in like this. You know, you've got that curved in 7 where that the stem on it curves. This one here, nice and straight. And you got your ink traps in there. And this isn't even the small size. This is the standard size. You know, the smaller, the extra small version is going to have even a bigger ink trap there. But you can see, it's not like one thing that's different. It's all of these little changes, and you can just imagine how tedious this would be. With 48 styles and 3 different subfamilies. But I really do think that he's kind of cracked the code here, and it'll be interesting to see what the reception is on this. I imagine we'll start to see it in web pages and user interfaces and stuff like that, especially when you look at the license, because the license on this is insane. The license on all mass driver typefaces are insane. But this right here is the display version. He doesn't say that this is going to be used for display. He doesn't say this is going to be used for body copy. But when you're building the extra large version, it is built for display. So yeah, he does say that. I apologize. Even though this is, you know, the intent of this is to be a user interface. User interface can maybe be large. I don't know. But if you wanted to use this out of display size, this is what the biggest, heaviest weight would look like. Let me go ahead and, oops, that's not that. Let me go ahead and show you the sizes on this one real quick. Oh, I've got these grouped, I think. Shoot. Can we get into this? Yeah, there we go. This is the Ultra. Nope, it's not going to work. I apologize. So that's the Ultra right there. That's how I was just doing this to kind of compare so you can see a little bit of how this would compare to Globus up here. So this is a nice big weight for Globus. And you can see the big gaps between these. You know, it's not quite as tight because that's made for small sizes, whereas extra large here, this is made for big, big, big sizes. Let me see if I can ungroup this real quick and we can change the sizes on this, because I do want to show you that this is intentionally meant to be big. So this is the extra large version. If we go down to the UI version, you're getting a little bit more space in there, but you're also getting some ink traps. And then if we went down to the extra small version, you know, it's spacing out so much more that it's not even on the screen anymore. You've got giant ink traps. And while they could look kind of cool, it looks kind of mechanical a little bit, looks kind of, I don't know, durable or something like that. It looks like folded steel. It just doesn't really compare to this. Look how nice and clean this is. So again, purpose-built font. It's built for these optical sizes. And in modern browsers, this will actually optically resize based on that variable font from 6 all the way up to 48. 6 point to 48 point, it will optically resize in modern browsers. So that's super cool. And this is it in body copy. So while he was talking about interface, interfacing and looking at, wayfinding and watches and phones and user interfaces and stuff. I think this set's really nice in body copy. Super legible, super readable. And once again, we read best what we read most. And if people are used to reading Helvetica and Arial and any of these other newer neo-grotesques, I think that this is just kind of doing everything that those do, but maybe a little bit better. So I do have, let me see, I do want to show you, I know we're really getting in the weeds here. I do want to show you some of the crazy typography features, because I would be really cutting you guys short if I didn't let you see these. So it does have legible forms. So let's go ahead and look at the I and the J here. Boom. Actually, it's got quite a few of them here. If we look at the I, the L, we're getting, the uppercase I, the lowercase L. So he really is putting to use some of the things that he built in with MDIO. We've got some square punctuation. I'm not gonna put on the screen the actual punctuations, the period and stuff, but you can see the tittles on the I and the J there, the dots. Circled numbers. If you're gonna do wayfinding, if you're gonna do interface, you're gonna need some circled numbers. Oops, let me go ahead and make this nice and big for you. You're gonna need circled numbers. There they are, beautifully centered, look very, very nice. And you've got the solid versions. That's very nice as well. And like we saw on the website there, you've got the /0. One thing, this will be the last thing I show on this. One thing that's really, really cool is it's got fractions, and not just any kind of fractions. It's got the fractions that you can just set like this. So you can set any number on top, any number on bottom, set the slash through it, and you can get a fraction. Let's go ahead and compare that to Globus real quick. I mean, we're looking at a much different price tag here, so keep that in mind. But if we pull up Globus here, let's pull it on top. Let's change these back to a standard weight. Globus does have fractions. Let me go ahead and show you it right here with the 3, 4. Globus does have fractions, but it's got very specific ones. So it's going to have your standard ones. So you're not going to be able to, you could do your subscript and your superscript maybe, and you could kind of make it work, but you're not going to have the same ease that you do if we were to try to put this slash between the 4 and the 5. So if we put it right here, fraction, you're going to get nothing out of that. But one thing, this is actually kind of a huge thing that I missed about Globus, I apologize, is that this has small caps. Boom. I put it on all small caps. Hold on. Small caps. There we go. So this is your small caps. And you can tell this is small caps because if we do this and we turn these off of small caps, the weight matches perfectly right there. So if you wanted small caps and you wanted a universe, even a Helvetica alternative, Globus does have small caps. And that is one thing that MDUI does not have. We're talking about UIs, so maybe it doesn't necessarily need it, but watch what happens if we turn on small caps here. You get faux small caps. Be very, very wary of this. Be careful that you don't accidentally click this when your font doesn't have them, because you can see how much different the weight, I apologize. You can see how much different the weight is here, right? Between the C and the D on these fake small caps right here, because the program will give you small caps, and basically what it does, it just makes the capitals very small. But Globus has nice real small caps here. That's a beautiful thing. Okay, let me show you the license on MDUI from MassDriver, because this is something that even if you don't want MDUI, even if you don't want MDIO, if you are thinking about where you want to buy your typefaces from, MassDriver is one of the places that you should be looking. Looking at licenses for ourselves. You can get a 50% off student if you 50% off discount if you are a student. And look here, student license remains valid after you graduate. So if you're close to graduation, go ahead and stock up on your MassDriver fonts. Let's go ahead and do this for commercial, one person. There's the price right there. You're noticing, what are we missing here? There's no way to choose desktop, web, app, social media, broadcast, logo, all of these things that other foundries break it down into. How is this possible? Let's go ahead and scroll all the way down to the bottom here. And we go to licensing. MassDriver has a great license I'm going to go ahead and read this verbatim. Our licensing philosophy is pretty simple. You pay for a font and then you can use it. We don't charge renewal fees or set time limits. We don't require ongoing upgrades when your business grows, and we don't demand add-ons for web, app, logo, or other use cases. So it says for most clients, the only thing you need to do is pick your size. So that's what we did. We picked one, and that's how we got that base price of $960 for the full 48 font family, 48 font typeface family. The other thing that I want to note here is this: what happens if my company grows? As long as your license was valid when you bought it, it'll remain valid forever. So similar to the student license, where if you, let me go ahead and turn on my face if we're going to do a soapbox here. Similar to, I guess we could do the big face. Similar to the student license, if you bought it when you're a student, then you get to keep using it, even though you got that 50% off discount. If you buy this when it's just a one-person show, I'm one person, this is my entire company. If my company grows to 100 people, as long as it was valid when I purchased the typeface, I can keep using it. And not just for one thing, I could use it for everything. So I'm very appreciative of this. I'm very appreciative of any of the foundries that are out there trying to make licensing more simple and think about the end user. And it would be easy. Massdriver is a great foundry. It would be very easy for them to, nickel and dime you and break everything down like most foundries do. One thing I've noticed though is that the best foundries that are the most confident in the quality of the typefaces they're putting out, they do two things. One, they put out full font, fully featured trials, and two, they have great licenses. And I think we're seeing that here, and I think that we've seen a very nice upgrade to a very nice evolution to that international typography style, that Helvetica, the Universe, the Accidents, Grotesque, all of those fonts. I think that Massdriver's really knocked it out of the park here. So let me go ahead and put my face off the screen. We'll go back to the screen cap. Let's look at some other new releases that are on the road, that are coming up. This first one here, I actually missed. This one's coming from Offtype. If you don't know, Offtype is it's like the experimental side of Pangram. So this first one, it actually passed me by. This was actually released on March 10th, so 10 days ago. It's still a new release in the world of typography, but I typically try to hit these things in the next episode or two when they release. The specimens on this one are crazy. So I'm not going to do, these are not deep dives, these next four. These are just new releases, going to talk about them. We'll do deep dives later if it makes sense. So 6 styles on this one. There are color options, there are grid options. There are these weird like italics that are rotalics, but look at these specimens. These are crazy. Sometimes a font can stand on its own, sometimes a font can stand on its own, but can just do so much more and grab so much more attention if you see it in these crazy specimens. So if you just saw sector down here like this at the small size or sector narrow, you might not think too much of it, but when you can see this large, look at these crazy specimens. I love what they've chosen to do here with the glowing effect, and you can see the grids on there, so you can probably start to see what's happening. It's called Sector. It's like a modular typeface that's built on this crazy grid. You can see a lot of circles, you see some straight lines and stuff like that, but you get some really unique characters because it does have to be built on this modular grid. We'll do a deep dive on this one in the future, don't worry. Yeah, there it is right there. 12 styles, 700 glyphs on each one of those. OpenType features color fonts, so you can get these grids. That's one thing with a lot of these modular typefaces. A lot of times they don't come with they don't come with that background grid. So you see these cool things and you can't really do quite as much with them as you'd hope you could. But Sector Collection, there are 6 different styles for this one. We will get into these. They're pretty wild. Next up is a typeface from the Designer's Foundry. And in a similar vein, this one's working on a pixel grid. I guess it's not necessarily super similar. It is working on a grid, so it's somewhat similar in that regard. So the second new release here that we're going to talk about is the Designer's Foundry. Once again, not going to be a deep dive, But you could see it is it's a pixel font, but it's a pixel font that's variable. So we can see square bold on the left there and square bold on the, or squircle bold on the right there. Square bold, circle, and squircle. It looks like circle has a few more weights in it than the other two do, which is interesting. But we can test this out just real quick. So if we go all the way down to, can we make this any bigger? Doesn't look like it. If we can, I'm missing it. Maybe this? No, that's the letting. Okay, we'll just stick with what we've got here. You can see if we make the weight, it goes all the way down to 100, it goes all the way up to 700. The shape though, we'll keep it big for now. The shape on this, you can turn into what you would typically think of as a pixel font, but you kind of got that in between. I could see this be pretty interesting to animate. I don't know how many people will do that. But you can make it really small, make those circles really far apart, and then do the squares from there. This is another one that I think is going to look really cool, big, even though typically pixel font is made to be small. You know, that would make sense. There's like 7 pixel grid, I think is what they're working on here. But I'm just going to scroll through this real quick, give you a preview of it. They do have some very nice specimens here as well. I think these types of, I think that's kind of what I was thinking of with the sector font here. These specimens here feel kind of similar. You don't have like necessarily the glowing effect, but you got that black background. But set these side by side real quick. You've got that similar sort of, can I get to it? Maybe I shouldn't have done that. You guys see what I mean, right? Like they feel a little bit the same, in the same vein at least. Let's go ahead and close that one and focus on Serica here by the Designer's Foundry. I definitely want to check out this one as well. I want to play around with the variable part of it. Look at this. Got the dots overlaid on top of the square. That's pretty cool. I think maybe not necessarily using the variable slider. While you do have the variable slider to go from circles to squares, I think maybe more interesting is this one right here, where you would go from like small circles up to big circles, or small squares up to the big squares that connect into like a traditional pixel font. And you can see right here, we're seeing some alternates. There's some alternate J's and things like that. And this isn't your typical, you've got some symbols and stuff going on there. I can't really make out all of them. I can see some eyes right here, a heart. We'll have to play around with these for sure. I did not expect to see symbols in the pixel font, but I'm very much here for it. You can see this isn't just a typical like boring pixel font either. They've really got pretty creative with some of these characters and glyphs. I'm going to scroll over these super fast, but we will do a deep dive on these in the future, so don't worry. You can see there are quite a few alternates here, open type features. Yeah, there's a lot going on in this for a pixel font. Have you ever seen a pixel font with swashes? I don't think I have. So there it is. And then we've got the inspiration here, but we'll get into the backstory next week. And there's our designer right there. 1,150 glyphs. We'll get into all those details next week. But that is Serica. First look at Serica by the Designer's Foundry. I'll have to learn if it's Serica or Serica. But I've already been in touch with Daniel, and hopefully we'll get this one for next week. Our third new release here. Let me go ahead and wait till this loads so that people that watch with chapters will get the full experience. Okay. Our third new release here. Got a white screen right here. I'm not sure why that's happening. We saw that happening with, who was it? Blaze Type yesterday. Whatever's supposed to be up there is not there. This here is CMM Radio from Monotype, and it is a geometric sans serif font reimagining of the classic Futura typeface with legibility and inclusivity in mind. I think this is very similar to what we just saw with Globus and MDUI. We're taking a font that everybody knows and loves and trying to make it better, trying to do something new rather than just repeating it. You know, we saw Futura 100 come out, and it's the most Futura there's ever been, and it's in every language. If you want Futura, get Futura. This is attempting to be Futura that's more legible and more inclusive, and they're also doing some really fun things with this. So once again, not going to dig into this super deep right now. I already have the trial version of this one, and it is full font. It is the full version with variables, but you can see if you're familiar with Paul Renner's original version of Futura, you know that it came, oh, here, right here on the left, this is actually it. You know, it came with all these wacky alternates, and some of these, you know, most of these, you know, as new versions got made in the Foundry, you know, physical metal type in the Foundry, they just quit making the ones that people weren't using, and a lot of those got scrapped before the Foundry actually released them. Bauer type was incredibly smart with what they released here, but now we're in the digital age, and it costs nearly nothing, you know, just time and energy to put in all these alternates. So we've got the alternates, some really interesting ones here with the Y, the M's, the squared off M. But if we go a little further, look at this. That is really wild. So it says long board. That's going to be really crazy to play with. I'm really interested to look at this. We'll definitely compare it to like the standard Futuras, but it's not a slouch either. You know, it's not just a display typeface here. We can see all of the alternates, so you're going to be getting everything. I'm interested to see how the legibility and stuff like that is built into it. Legibility and inclusivity, but you could see 5 different versions of A right there. Probably shouldn't spend too much time on this. I don't want to spoil it too much, but I do think that this webpage is very well done. These are very nice specimens, and it does a good job of showing, getting kind of like excited about all these alternates and stuff. And look at the variable right here. You've even got a variable slider for the italics. So it's not going to be like a true italic. It's going to be more of an oblique, but that's what I would expect coming from a Futura-esque style, a Futura-esque typeface. I wouldn't expect it to have like completely different italics built into it. You can see all the glyphs right there. So really excited for this one. Really excited for all of these, to be honest. But this one here is probably the most practical out of the 3 that we've looked at so far, just in terms of like actually using a typeface. It's much more similar than the ones we looked at today. This one here, I was ready for this one last week. This is coming from Type. So our 4th new release here is from Type. I was prepared to talk about this in the last episode. This is Spinelo. But I wasn't sure what was going on. I was kind of waiting to see which fonts were being released. Typecache had said that 2 different versions were released. That Spinelo was released, and also not this one, Topazio was released. But then you go to the website and the link is broken for Topazio, so I was kind of waiting to see what would happen. Type does have trials, but they're limited characters, so you know, the fun things that you want to play around with here, you can't. This one has 6 weights and 20 stylistic sets. So again, this is just a preview. We'll have to wait and see if we can get the review license for this one. Last time it did take them a little while to reply to me. They seem like they're pretty busy over there, but this looks pretty nice. It looks very friendly. So this is part of a 4 typeface collection called Glyphion, coming from Antoine Brun. He did give a preview there on his Instagram. That's what we were looking at before. But this looks pretty nice. This looks pretty friendly. It looks like nothing else we looked at today. You could see already a lot of ligatures. I'm assuming this D here is an alternate. I'm assuming that T there is an alternate. With the 20 stylistic sets, it looks pretty crazy. It looks pretty fun, and it could be a really fun workhorse for the right person, for the right brand. You know, not every brand's going to be able to pull this off, but I think some could. Look at all of these features. Oh my God, they just keep going. Look at all of those ligatures. Look at all these alternates. That is wild. Circled numbers, squared numbers. You've got your, those aren't fractions, but your superior and inferior, they're calling them there. Yeah, there is a lot going on with this one from Type. I really hope we can get our hands on this. And I really hope, I'm looking forward to all 4 of these. So this is Antoine Brun's Instagram right here, and he's previewing 4 different typefaces that are going to be coming out of this Glyphion. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Glyphion release schedule here. Really cool animation as well. But yeah, so that's Spinelo. That's the one that we are that we can look at right now. Topazio, and there are 2 other mystery ones that are coming up. So that is going to be all of our new releases today. I really hope we weren't looking at my face. No, I don't think we were. Okay. Let me see, face cam. So let me see, do we have one more thing? We do, we have one more thing. I apologize, let's go back to the screen here. The last thing here, I'm gonna send you off if you want some more type typography on your Friday night, or if you want something to watch this weekend, go ahead and let me switch the screen. I apologize. There we go. Go ahead and look in the description and you will find the link for this. Again, not sponsored, just there for your convenience. And this is a presentation for Typograde. This is Typograde number 59. These are live, in-person, real presentations that get published later on. I don't think the date's on here for when this was, but this probably was a few weeks ago. This is Genevieve Tyack, and she is a wayfinding, what would you say? She's like a wayfinding expert. I'm not sure what here says, experienced designer based in Vancouver. So this Typograde is in Vancouver, Canada. She's an experienced designer, but she goes through and talks about a lot of wayfinding. And it was really, really insightful. I have a few notes for you that I wanted to note. This one right here for sure. So one thing she noted is that print is rarely seen straight on. I think that that's something really important for us to remember as typographers, those of you that are type designers, graphic designers, UI designers, whatever it is. There's very rarely an occasion in real life where you're like looking at type straight on. Maybe when you're on your phone, but even then you're probably looking at an angle. You're probably looking at your computer screen straight on. But even like books and stuff like that, you're probably not really looking at it entirely straight on. So it's important, if you need it to be legible, if you need it to be readable, that it's readable at more angles than just straight on. The next thing I thought was really interesting is this right here. That's why I'm paused on it. And she noted that in healthcare, less hierarchy is actually better. So using something that is very similar, that it's calming, that it's able to like make you feel comfortable and read it and just immediately know what's going on, know where to go when you're in crisis, these types of things. So rather than building out, like a super clever hierarchy, one, maybe two different sizes, so you can see main registration there in the back, but then you can see the wayfinding here. On the sign, they're not trying to do anything crazy with it. They're just putting one single style on there, and then you've got a little bit bigger arrows on there pointing you in the direction. So I thought that was pretty interesting. The other thing she said was test your your wayfinding in the worst possible situations. Don't test it in ideal situations. Test it in the worst situations. I think that's a great takeaway. The last thing that I wanted to note that she talked about was that wayfinding is not signage, and signage is not wayfinding. So sometimes there are signage designs, there are signs, but those aren't necessarily wayfinding. Wayfinding isn't always necessarily a sign. So a lot of times, like we saw at the healthcare and the hospital there, that wayfinding, it is a sign. But here she's talking about these plants. They were trying to figure out how they could divide up this hallway at a stadium, for divide the players and divide the VIP people that are going to be walking down this hallway. Rather than stick like an ugly, those things that, that have the, she said what the specific name was, and now I can't remember, the poles that have that like seatbelt thing that hooks from one to the other that you typically see at concert venues and stuff like that. Rather than have one of these going down this hallway, which is supposed to be for VIP and the players, she wants it to be more of an elevated experience. They decided to put these real plants in there. It was only like a 3-day event, so you could put real plants in there without the fear of them dying and stuff like that. And she just talked about how nice it was to have this and to smell like the real, the plant life and stuff like that. But I just really found that it was interesting because when you do think of wayfinding, you typically do think of typography or icons or a map. But wayfinding can be these subtle things like this that kind of nudge people in a certain direction without them consciously knowing that's what they're doing. I know that part's not necessarily typography, but I still find it interesting. So this is a shorter video, much shorter than mine. It's 36 minutes, and she is much more of an eloquent speaker. So go check that out. That is linked in the description. Should be all the way at the bottom. That is Genevieve. She said you could call her Jen. So Jen Kayak for Typograde number 59. Let me get a drink of water and we will get out of here. I'm going to turn off my face while I get a drink of water. Almost spilled it. So it's good that I turned that off. So I know maybe we got a little bit too in the weeds for some people. Go ahead and leave me some feedback. I enjoy doing the deep dives. I think I enjoy looking at them and doing them and looking at every single character and seeing what's different and being like, oh, I see what he did here. I see like why he did that. I see how this differentiates. I see why she made the X height larger here or did this. I like doing all that. I know that I need to get a little bit better at like explaining that more concisely and probably more eloquently. But hopefully you got a good idea about, just another Foundry with JAF, Globus, and Mass Drivers MDUI, because I think they're both excellent typefaces. They are in different price categories, but you're getting different things for that price. Yeah, I think they're excellent examples of evolving typography, because that's what we're doing. We're all just kind of incrementally pushing things forward and trying to make things better for the next generation. So it's interesting to be a part of that. It's really fun to report on it. I hope you guys are enjoying watching that. So I won't waste any more of your Friday night or Saturday or whatever day you're watching this. I will see you on Monday. I'm going live Monday, Wednesday, Friday for anybody who hasn't been here for the last couple of episodes. Switch from Sundays. We're going Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'll be here, same time, same place. And I'll see you Monday. I've been Curtis Simpson. This was Typography News number 41.